Okay, I don't know if I'm live yet. Someone tell me something in the comments if you can hear me. Or should I pull a Durfee? Is the camera on? All right, you can hear me. Okay. Setting this one up is a lot tougher than the other one. Let me need to be able to see your comments. I'm using StreamYard for the first time, so I'm a little confused. But hello, everybody that is here. I am happy to be here with my 1K celebration. I'm so happy to see some people in the comments already. First of all, thank you all. I mean, this has just been a pleasure for me to start this channel. You know, I said that I started all of this out of the pandemic, wanting to have something tangible to show for what happened as we were all shut down, and that I was just not laying around the house all the time. So I never thought I'd grow to this. I obviously thought I'd only get to like 500-600 people. So I'm really happy to be able to celebrate today with all of you. So today's just like a Q&A. I have a bunch of questions people had asked from the first video that I dropped where I talked about this in the comment section. And then I did a community tab post a couple days ago and got a few comments from that. So I'll answer some questions there. I want to keep up with the chat first though, especially all of you that are here live. So thank you for being here. I saw a couple of you here ahead of time. Shad and Danny can't make it, but I appreciate you checking out the broadcast afterwards if you like it. And Theo, thanks for the shout out on the Grimoire. I saw that, but I was trying to struggle with using StreamYard for the first time, and I'm still a little confused, to be honest, but hopefully this will work out okay. But I'm glad I'm live. So let's see. Thank you for the thank yous. Thank you. Joanna's here. Nina K-Hot is here. You can hear me loud and clear. Theo's making some coffee. Yeah, it's a little earlier. I guess if you're like 9 a.m., I think you're on that one. Anyway, Caitlin found my content a few weeks ago. Awesome. I'm glad you're here. Appreciate all of you. So if you have any questions, you know, you can drop them in the chat here. If not, I'll just start working through the questions that I have. I'll try to answer the ones that are live, you know, first if I do see them. But I'm here just to ask me anything. So I've enjoyed being on the other side of these broadcasts recently. It's a lot of fun just getting some real-time interaction and just seeing where conversations go and things like that. So I don't have a panel of us here, but I have me. So I'm happy to talk to any of you, any questions you may have. So let's see. Let me go through here. Paramita, thank you. I know you have some questions. I have some queued up. Thank you, Andrew, for stopping by. And thank you for all of your support. You've been awesome. You're so good about just helping the small guys out, you know, promoting us and retweeting us and all of that. That's just so fantastic. Matt on Books is here. And if you want to hear me talk a little longer, I'm going to be on his channel this afternoon. We're doing just a discussion. I think he called it Friends on Books on Matt's channel with me and AP Canavan from Critical Dragon, and Philip Chase will be there. So I'm sure they'll convince me to start reading Malazan tonight or something like that. Anyway, just make sure I go through this. Yeah, Theo gave me a great shout on Grimoire so far. All right, I see the first question in the chat. Joanna asked, how do I read so many books with such a busy schedule? I would say the biggest way that I'm able to do that is I don't turn my TV on very often. I'd say maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week during football season, I turn my TV on. So because of that, most of my leisure time I am reading. I do have shows that I watch. Like, of course, right now I'm watching House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. But, you know, beyond those 2 dedicated hours a week, I mean, my TV doesn't get a lot of love. And I also, for at least 10 years, every night ends with a book. You know, an hour before I go to bed, 2 hours before I go to bed, I read. So it adds up. And I read pretty fast. I don't read as fast as like Brian Lee Durfee seems to read like 100 pages an hour or something like that. I'm probably 50, 60 pages an hour, but that's still fast by a lot of, from a lot of people that I've talked to that don't necessarily read that fast. So I think those are the biggest reasons. I mean, it is a priority. If I'm being 100% honest with myself, I think there's maybe a little bit of a compulsion there that I love books and I just want to read as many of them as I can. But, as far as having a compulsion, I think reading is probably not a bad one to have. So let's see. Song of Ice and Fire reader, dragons or direwolves? Oh, flip a coin. That's tough. Dragons, I think. Maybe because I've liked House of the Dragons. I've liked seeing more of the dragons. I think that's a coin flip question there. That's a tough one. Andrew, whose beard's better, mine or Theo's? Never mind, I know the answer. Yeah, Theo's beard is epic. I think Mike even commented on that as like one of the big reasons you should watch Theo's channel. There's obviously a lot more than that, but yeah, good question for sure. RJ, thank you. Appreciate you stopping by. Awesome. Let's see. Any other questions here? Matt asking, why am I so good looking? I don't know. Good genes, I guess. Let's see. Any other questions here before I go to my pre-coded ones? I think Andrew has a channel too. Yeah, he's huge for good reason. Let's see. Oh, Just One Reader asked, have you started the Fits in the Full trilogy? No, but it's on my TBR to start in October. I have an ambitious October plan, so I won't finish the whole trilogy that month, but I think I'll probably read the first 2 books in October and then finish it up in November. And I'm super excited for that. I mean, this has been, Robin Hobb is my favorite fantasy author, and this journey that started last year with Farseer has just been one of the most remarkable reading experiences I've had. So I'm really excited to finish. I'm a little bittersweet, but it's more excitement to see how it ends. I trust her as an author. I even enjoyed Rain Wild. I know a lot of people didn't like Rain Wild as much, but I enjoyed the world building aspect of it. And I'm just anxious to see Fitz's journey. So I'll be talking about those at the end of October, definitely, and probably into November. And then I'm sure I'll do some sort of wrap-up video where I talk about just my thoughts about the whole series, because it has been remarkable. And I think The Realm of the Elderlings will go down as a top 3, book series of all time for me when it's all said and done. Let's see. Anything else we hear? Top of the head first. Andrew asked about my first Stephen King books I recommend the most. Different Seasons is always the first one that I recommend, because I feel that because there's 4 novellas in that collection, I think it's an easy entry point, and it's a great way, I think, to hook a King reader, because you get 4 very different tales and they're all great. And I've always said that for me, what I love most about Stephen King is just he's a master storyteller, and you get the diversity of him here. If they want a novel, I usually try to find out what kind of things they like. So if they are a horror reader, I usually point them towards Salem's Lot is usually the next one. If they're on the magical realism side of things, I usually recommend The Green Mile, even if they've seen the movie, because I think that is another great one to kind of, hook some readers. So those would be my top 3 there. Kamikaze dropped in. Hey, thanks for coming by. I do have your question, so if you want to stop back, I know you had asked a question in one of the chats. I'll definitely answer that one. Matt, don't read so fast. Yeah, I agree. Thoughts on Rain Wild? Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I love the world building aspect of it, which began, of course, in Live Ship. Spooky horror books this Halloween. I am not. I'm doing nothing for spooky October or spooky season. I have a physical TBR that's bigger than I want it to be right now, so I didn't want to add anything to that. So it's mostly going to be fantasy and sci-fi for this October. So nothing spooky season this year. Fazilla, thank you for the 1K. I appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. Big reading project coming up. Francois asked about that. There is, and I'm not going to say because I'll be vague. There's a little cohort of 3 other booktubers that I'm joining that we're going to read a big book series together, and we're going to do a big announcement about it. So just stay tuned for that. But that'll be something that will probably drive a lot of the reading decisions that I read next year. So that is coming up. Andrew, I agree. Farseer through Tawny Man is perfection. I know I obviously couldn't see your video about Rain Wild and Fits in the Fool, but I see people say that the first three is the great part of Realm of the Elderlings. And then I see people that say that all five are great. So I'm curious to see where I fall on that. I had a friend that I convinced to read it, and he called the 9 Fitz books all perfect. So we will see. Theo, is there a specific edition of Frankenstein I should read next month? I'm always confused. I have a free one. The one I have is, I don't remember the year, but it's considered the definitive text. I don't remember the year of it, but I think that's the one, but I don't know which edition that is, to be honest. I did enjoy it. It's very different than I thought it would be, because the those depictions are very much different from the book. So that was definitely just a different experience. And it was a little jarring at first. So try to go in with, I would say, lower or different expectations as to the lumbering Frankenstein that you see on the silver screen, because he's very different in the book. But that's a great one to read for sure. Andrew asked, what book or series do you think doesn't get enough love or attention? Well, I just did a video on hidden gems. So if you didn't see that, that was a great to talk about. I talked about 9 different books and one book series that I think don't get enough love. But there are some others that are starting to get some love that I would talk about. When I read Warlord Chronicles 5 or 6 years ago, I literally didn't know anybody that read it. So it's been so great the last 2 or 3 years to see on BookTube so many people reading it, loving it, talking about it. That was one that I would say was kind of under the radar quite a bit. So I think those plus that video would answer that one. Realm of the Elderlings. Yep. Okay. Okay. As an experienced fantasy reader, what is one of the weirdest, strangest books you've come by in the genre? Looking for something that pushes the limits. Wow. Trying to peek over to my shelf to have some inspiration for that one. That's a tough question. Genre bending books. I mean, I think more, maybe not in fantasy, but more in magical realism. You see odd things like maybe the more fantastical side of Murakami. Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World comes to mind as one that's very, very different. Wild Sheep Chase has some odd elements. As far as within the fantasy genre, I don't know if I've read anything I'd consider that way. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that one. Pushes the limits. But if any of you can answer his question there, that would be great. Let's see. Hortler just found my channel today. Subscribe. That's awesome. Thank you for being here. Do I have a Discord? I don't, but the one I'm on the most is the Grimoire. So go check the Grimoire out. That's Alex from Tall Guy Reads, Theo from Rekindled Reader, RJ from RJ Reads, and Baron. They run a great Discord over there. That's the one I go to first. I have a few others I go to, but if I were to say the one that you're most likely to bump into me, that would probably be the one. They've just built a nice little community over there. I enjoy just popping in there. Andrew, getting into historical fiction, any recommendations? Bernard Cornwell, of course, Warlord Chronicles. Also, his Grail Quest trilogy is really good. And the book after that, 1356, which is kind of a standalone, but has some of the characters from the Grail Quest. That one is about the Battle of Poitiers or Poitiers. I don't know how to say it. It's French, and that language confuses me, frankly. Those would be top recommendations. Ken Follett's historical fiction is amazing. I talked about a World War II historical fiction book in my Hidden Gems video called The Young Lions by Irwin Shaw, which is fantastic. Shogun, of course, I know you were talking about reading that. That's my book of the year. And I was happy to say that's, all of you that are booktubers here, that our individual book reviews don't get as many views because people don't click on them unless they're really interested in the book, or even if they've just read the book. So I was happy my Shogun review is one of my top 5 most viewed videos, and it has like 2,000 views. So I was happy for that because that was a book that I love. It's still my book of the year. 97 or 98 books into the year, it's still number one. So that's definitely a big historical fiction recommendation. One more I would say is The Killer Angels by Michael Shara. That's set in the American Civil War, and it was quite remarkable. That was I talked about that one in my video of I think I did a top 5 books so far that I shot like in July or something like that, and talked about that one. That's a really good one as well. Oh, Penny, thanks for popping in. Appreciate it. Have I read Terry Goodkind? I have not read any Terry Goodkind. I've read one of the 3 Terrys, the fantasy Terrys. I've read Terry Brooks. I haven't read Terry Goodkind, or, I can't say I've read Terry Pratchett because I was 13 and I don't remember Discworld, but I will read some Discworld because I've heard such great things. What is my favorite Russian classic? Oh, easily Crime and Punishment. Crime and Punishment is a book that I will continue to read my entire life, and probably change translators every time I read it because it's kind of a different experience each time. What sci-fi do you think has the best ideas? I'll tell you, the book I read this month that blew my mind was Replay by Ken Grimwood. I talked about it on that Hidden Gems video as well. It's kind of like Groundhog Day, where the main character he dies at the very beginning, the very first page of the book. So it's not a spoiler. And then he's reborn 25 years in the past. He's 18 years old and he's in his dorm room. And the premise is he keeps replaying his life, but it's not superficial. It gets pretty deep by the end, because you see when he keeps going back mentally, he's 25 years older each time that he completes this loop. And just seeing him evolve and going through this and trying to understand what's going on and how he can get out of this loop. That's one of the most thought-provoking works of science fiction I've read in a long time. So Replay by Ken Grimwood, definitely check that one out. Let's see. Yeah, Reading Project, definitely excited for that. Andrew's restarting Malazan. I'm scared. Hey, that's what I've felt about that series as well for a very long time. It's definitely daunting when you see how many people that have started and couldn't finish it. So that one's definitely a challenge. But I will read that. I would say I commented on Alex's video the other day that the 3 authors in the fantasy genre that are kind of top of my TBR right now are Stephen Erickson, Mark Lawrence, and John Gwynne. Those are kind of the top 3 that I need to definitely get to next year. Let's see. Oh, Joanna, thank you. Hidden Gems video was one of her favorites. Very cool. It was fun to shoot. My favorite kind of videos are those kinds of videos where I can just talk about a bunch of books I love. That's my favorite. The one flaw I found this year, I'm doing those Ender's Game reviews every month, and I haven't enjoyed it as much as I've liked because a couple of the books I didn't like as much, and I don't enjoy talking about the books I don't like as much. I'd rather just kind of read it, put it to the side, and move on. So I don't know if I'll ever do another series of reviews like that where I say I'm definitely going to read and review everything of, X book series or whatever. But I definitely enjoyed the Hidden Gems video quite a bit. So, oh, sorry, K-Hod, the live streams at a bad time. Yeah, I tried to pick a time that I thought might work on a Saturday, but I know with people all across the world, it's tough. Joanna, Warlord, favorite series for me. Yeah, it's one of my top 3 for sure. Andrew loves it as well. Matt's recruiting people from Malazan, of course, as he should. Sees. Okay, Perdido Street Station. I've heard that one talked about. That one sounds interesting. I haven't read any Jack White, but he's on the TBR for sure. He's an author that I want to say I heard Brian Lee Durfee talk about him the first time that I heard about him. So he may be one that I read pretty soon. But then again, it's hard. I have, big readers. I have a TBR of 400 books. Literally, it's a spreadsheet that I keep on my computer, and I read 100 books a year and the TBR grows because I watch a lot of your videos and I get all these recommendations and it just makes me just want to add them to the list. I mean, I have like another list here of things I'll be adding to the spreadsheet next time I open it. So I'll never get there, but I do want to read some Jack White. I have heard really good things. Let's see. Just want to make sure if I don't get, Piranesi, that one's on the shelf. That might be a great strange read. First fantasy science fiction horror book that I read that really hooked you for life in that genre. So for fantasy, the one that hooked me was Lord of the Rings, without a doubt. I was 12 years old and it was the third fantasy series I read. And it was just the one that just grabbed me and captured my imagination and continue to love it this day. In fact, there's a question someone else asked. I'm going to dip to that when it makes sense to talk about it, if I can find it here. Question that was asked from the comments of my previous video. Where is it? Okay. Katie had asked, have you reread any of your earliest reads and how did the reading experiences differ? So the answer to that question is yes. And the big answer is Lord of the Rings. I've read The Lord of the Rings 4 times in my lifetime. And each time I found something new that I loved about it. When I read it as that 12-year-old, it was the story. Nothing else. It was the story that captured my imagination, this fellowship, this grand quest. And it was just this fantastic experience of going through this world and this big, long journey from beginning to end. The second time I read it, I think I was 19 or 20. And that time around, it was the characters that hooked me. I came to love our 4 hobbits and Gimli and Legolas and all of the fellowship. And that time around, it was all about character. Third time I read it, I think I was probably in my late 20s, the third time that I read Lord of the Rings. And the thing that for me, the most profound thing that happened to me that third time through is when I realized that Sam's the hero of the story. And I never really realized that till that third time through, when I knew the characters, I knew the story, knew everything that was going to happen. And I just realized this selfless character was the true hero and is still to me one of my top 2 or 3 favorite characters in literature. The last time I read it, this was probably in my late 30s when I read this one, the 4th time. What really captured my imagination was the world. And by this time, I was obviously a much more seasoned reader, had read a lot of different places, fantasy worlds and so forth. And it just reinforced for me how rich and how detailed Middle-earth is and why, for me, it still hasn't been topped as far as just a world that's been created. So, that answered kind of 2 questions, but yeah, I do love Lord of the Rings. So continuing, the question was about the books that hooked me for life in certain genres. Science fiction, I really don't know what hooked me initially because I kind of stepped away from sci-fi for a while. So I don't know the answer to that one. Horror, my first Stephen King book was Thinner, which is not one of his best books. It was one of his Bachman books, but that one hooked me. Hooked me on Stephen King and hooked me on the horror genre. And Andrew's at 162 books so far this year. Flex. Let's see. Steve, congrats for the 1K. Thank you. Love that I cover Connolly. I love Connolly. He's got a new one out. It's on pre-order. It'll be here in November. Desert Star, I think it's called. I've not read James Lee Burke. I've not read him, but he's another one. I keep talking about Durfee. He's one of the channels I like a lot that he reads a lot of different things as well. And he always has great crime fiction and historical fiction recommendations. If I could recommend another crime fiction author like Connolly, who would that be? That would definitely be Dennis Lehane. I think he's grittier than Connolly. He's not as consistent as Connolly because, frankly, the only other author I think I've found with the consistency of Connolly is Joe Abercrombie. Connolly's written over 30 books and every last one of them are great. So I don't know if there's anybody that consistent, but Lehane when he's good, he's just as good as Connolly. And it's a little grittier, it's a little darker. Protagonists are a little bit more morally ambiguous than, Harry Bosch is pretty by the book, except for, when the book doesn't work, but he's always doing the right thing. So, yeah, I'd say Dennis Lehane is definitely one to read if you haven't read him. Patrick O'Brien's, yeah, I just added that to my TBR, Chuck. I don't know if you recommended that or not, but that's on the TBR right now. I've heard really good things about him as an author as well. Hey, Baron, thank you for the congrats. Thanks for stopping by here for this. Xenocide Got Weird. Yeah, I'm reading that. It's a reread. I'm reading that one next month. I actually filmed my Speaker for the Dead video review this morning, and should have that out midweek or so. Jennifer, thank you for liking my Ender's Game series reviews. I try to be honest with them, and I try to be positive on the ones that I don't like as much. But I'm trying to be as respectful as I can. I'm trying to take that Philip Chase approach that imagine the author's in the room with me, but with some of Card's choices, it makes it tough sometimes. But yeah, it's been fun to reread them for the past 8 months or whatever. So thank you, Francois. Appreciate it. Wow, third book you ever read was Lord of the Rings. That's fantastic. Yeah, Matt, I do want to see your Lord of the Rings editions video. Oh, you're cutting it now. So awesome. Looking forward to that. I think you love that. I sent you that link, I think when we were talking on Twitter the other day of the, I think it's mytolkiencollection.com. If you want to just drool and see somebody's Tolkien collection that's ridiculous, go check that one out for sure. Yeah. Okay, Andrew, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you for sure. Yes, Mystic River and Shutter Island are great. The Kenzie and Gennaro books are fantastic as well. Dennis Lehane's are great. Favorite self-published or indie book? Right now, Legend of Black Jack, A.R. Witham. I mean, home run of a book. I already have like 3 people I'm going to buy and gift that to in December. And I love that book. It's kind of, I think they say it's genre bending, but it's a portal fantasy. And it's kind of a younger, and it made me feel like a young reader again. So I would say that's my biggest one that I've loved this year. But I have loved, I've read a novella by Ryan Cahill and another novella by Thiago Abdallah that I love both of those. So those are 2 I'm going to read. I'm trying to make an effort to read one Indian author a month. So I have Will White lined up on the Kindle, and then I have a sci-fi author on the Kindle as well. So hopefully I'll get to those soon. It's just tough. There's so many authors out there, and it's tough when you see a lot of these booktube channels that tout so many of them. It's kind of hard to wade through all of it, but those are some ones that I've enjoyed so far, that I've read. Have I read suspense novels of James Cain? I have not. Postman Always Rings Twice. That is on my TBR. Haven't got to that. Double Indemnity. I think I saw the movie for that one. I'll definitely have to check him out though. But thank you, Kurt. Thanks for stopping by. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Jan. 1,000 is the beginning for me. I don't know. We'll see. I just enjoy the interaction for sure. Bing also likes the Lehane camp. So I've not read the Alvin series. Let's see, Joanna, books by female authors that are not Robin Hobb, particularly fantasy. Well, I read all of the Earthsea books this year, Ursula K. Le Guin, and have a deep appreciation for them. I didn't love the beginning of the series, and that was, I don't know if you saw AP's, one of his latest videos about it's a reader problem, not an author problem. I feel like I had a reader problem at the beginning, and I needed to read Ursula Le Guin a lot slower because she is a lot more dense. It's also, as a series, a lot different than a lot of traditional fantasy series. It's more, I mean, there are characters that occur throughout the series, but it's almost like 6 standalones. So that was one that, was a bit different for me, but I really enjoyed it. And I do think about it quite a bit. I think it's one of those, we all have those books we read that as we get further away from it, what we think changes, whether it gets higher in our estimation or lower. Earthsea is one that's continued to raise in my estimation from when I first read it. So it is a series I will read again. For a non-fantasy author, I love Kate Atkinson. She is one of my favorites. She writes literary fiction, historical fiction, sometimes a combination of the both. And she's just a great author. Maybe not as consistent as some of my other authors that I've read, but I'm big fan of her for sure. Okay, I just got into. I started with 1984. That's a great way to go. Yes, Tehanu Paramita. That was probably my favorite of the entire series. That and actually the short story collection was the two that stuck with me the most. The short story collection because of the world building that I really enjoyed that she did. That at that point I was kind of starved for as far as the series went. Okay, I'm caught up on comments here. I'm going to go through some of the questions that were asked on the comments section of the video, as well as my community tab. Some of these are great. The first 10 or so I've had time to think about. So I might be a little more coherent than some of these off-the-cuff questions you've asked me in the last half hour or so. So I like this first one. The person that asked it's a French title of their YouTube channel, Entrée du Histoire. And I'm sure I said that horribly because French is hard. But anyway, I love this question. If one of your favorite authors told you that he or she could write a book for you that would perfectly suit your reading tastes, what would you ask for? What kind of setting, characters, themes, etc.? This one for me, I want a book series, of course. I want Dan Simmons to write a book series on historical mysteries like he did with The Terror. If you don't know The Terror, he wrote about the Franklin expedition, which disappeared in the ice trying to find the Northwest Passage. And I would love for him to write just a series of books on historical mysteries that we don't know, Atlantis, the Voynich manuscript, the Lost Roanoke colony. I would love for him to write stories about that and to add his supernatural bent as to what happened to them. I love The Terror, and I would love to hear, him write a book like that. So that would be my choice for that. Same channel had asked me, what are my hobbies outside of reading? I used to be you can kind of see a little bit here. Actually, I could do this. I used to be a competitive distance runner. You can see a little bit of like trophies and things on the side there. But at this point, running, I'm not as competitive anymore because I'm older and went through, some injuries and things like that. I still run a lot, so I probably consider it more of a hobby, even though it was a thing that was going to be, it's a thing I'll do my entire life, but it was something that was a focus of my life, all the races that I've run and all of that. So that's a hobby that is definitely outside of reading. The other thing is for me, even though I'm a musician as a profession, music is also a hobby. As a performer, I don't perform as much as I used to, but I still play. I'm a trumpet player. I still play 5 or 6 days a week, even if I only play 1 or 2 gigs a year, because it's just something that I do. So I could say is in many ways, that's kind of a hobby for me at this point, because I guess my primary instrument as a musician is a conducting baton, but those are probably the 2 primary things that exist beyond reading as far as, things that are big hobbies for me. So, yeah, trophy flex. Yeah, I got a little bit. I could start dropping race times if you really want to know, but yeah, I was pretty fast. I had a minor sponsorship from a local running store and was really into the sport for quite a while and really enjoyed it. Let's see, a couple more in the chat. Matt, runner. Yeah, running, I tell you, cardiovascular health is truly the fountain of youth, because all the runners I know, they all look younger than they are. So hopefully that's the case for me as well. Let's see. Jan asks, do you have any favorite recent fantasy adaptations? You think fantasy could become as mainstream as superhero media? I think it can. I think Game of Thrones has shown that it's possible with the right kind of storytelling and the right kind of story. It can be just as big. I think the problem is a lot of the adaptations just haven't captured the imaginations of people as much. Um, Favorite recent ones. I mean, I'm obviously watching Rings of Power, and I'm watching House of the Dragon. I prefer House of the Dragon. I think it's just a more compelling story, but I'm enjoying both. I watched the latest episode of Rings of Power last night. I mean, it's visually, it's just beautiful. And I do like seeing some of the Second Age. The story isn't as compelling to me as all of the political intrigue. I mean, the tension in that last House of the Dragon episode was fantastic. Those are the two that I recently have liked the most. But I watch all of them. I love Wheel of Time. I didn't love the adaptation. I liked a lot of it, but I still watched it. I enjoy the 2 seasons of The Witcher. So, I'm certainly going to consume just about anything thrown at me. But I'd say House of the Dragon is probably the one that's most common recently that I enjoy the most. What's my profession? I'm a music educator. I teach high school orchestra, and it's something I love. It's one of those jobs that doesn't feel like a job most of the time. So that's what I get to do. Baron, best songs on BookTube confirmed. Probably. Play us a little music. I was actually thinking about that. I was going to do a review I read last year the biography of Louis Armstrong, and I was thinking of starting that video with a little trumpet. So maybe I'll do that. So I guess stay tuned. Did I read the Murakami memoir? What I talk about running? I did. And I really enjoyed that because, like most of us, when we enjoy something, we enjoy people talking about it. Like all of us are readers. I know most of us love hearing authors talk about their craft. Like the one question I always want to ask an author is, what their process is. Are they a 9 to 5, or do they write in the morning? Do they write when inspiration strikes them? Are they a plotter? Or are they a pantser? I like to know all of that. So I did enjoy that memoir by Murakami, especially because, he's just like most runners. Most runners are not competitive. They're not. I mean, I'm lucky that, subtle flex, I've won some races. So I'm lucky that I've been someone who's broken the tape in races before. But, you get a race with several thousand people, like only one person's going to be winning the race. But the people in the middle of the race and in the back of the race, they're working just as hard. They're doing the exact same thing that you're doing up front. And, Murakami's kind of a middle of the pack runner. So I enjoyed reading that just as much as reading memoirs of, competitive distance runners that I've, encountered as a fan throughout the years. So, I did enjoy that. Green Wedding. I haven't heard it called that, Matt, but it was, man, that tension for sure. Yeah. K-Hot, I believe, definitely agree with that too. All right. So more people want to hear me play, so I'll have to do some of that. Hello, Chirag. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, band member. Oh, I love it. And keep playing your flute. And I know Penny was here earlier. I think she plays like in a church orchestra or something like that too. So, had a couple drinks. You must be in a different, time zone as me. Cause it's, I'm central time. So it's before noon. So too early for a drink for me. Let's see. Theo, you're reading Lord of the Rings next couple months. Should you wait to watch Rings of Power? I think you can watch it because there really isn't. I mean, there's some characters that'll cross over, but I really don't think that would ruin your experience of enjoying that world. So, you like that Sanderson mentions his hours and daily schedule. I do too. I love him, and some more authors have done this as well. I love that transparency, just learning about how they do what they do. It's just really fantastic to me. Oh, Penny, you're still here. You play flute and piano. So yeah, I love seeing more musicians for sure. All right, I'm caught up here. Let me go to another question here. Oh, Paramita, and if I'm saying your name wrong, please correct me because I know we interact on the Grimoire all the time. She asked this one, and I thought about this one, 5 Desert Island books, but she gave me an out. She said a book series counts as one book. So here's my answer for this. And I think this is a really good answer. Number 1, Lord of the Rings, because I want to read that the rest of my life. But since a book series counts as one, so what I would like to do is maximize my desert island time. So of course, Wheel of Time is a good choice because that's 14 books, 15 books if you let me, include New Spring in there. So that one would be one I'd want on the desert island. And then I also thought, well, I need a different genre. So I think I wanted a science fiction genre. The series I would pick, even though Foundation is longer, I would pick the 6 Dune novels by Frank Herbert. I just feel there's a lot more depth there, and I think they would benefit from a reread. So that's 3. And then I'm going to pick 2 things I haven't read because I'm stuck on this island with time to read. I want 2 book series that will be something that hopefully will reread for me. So the first, I would pick the Malazan Book of the Fallen because I haven't read it yet. It's 10 books. Some of them are huge. And from what everybody tells me, it benefits from rereads. So if I'm stuck on this desert island, I think Malazan would be a great choice to take with me, even though I haven't read it. And then because I love historical fiction, I would take Bernard Cornwell's Saxon Tales. There's 13 of those, so a longer book series. So that way I get some fantasy, I get some historical fiction, get some science fiction, and I'm able to get some new works for me. So that's my answer to the desert island. Thank you for giving me the outs with the book series. If it were 5 individual books, I don't know how I would have answered that question. All right. Have I read Ultra Marathon Man by Dean Karnazes? I actually haven't. I don't know why. I know my uncle read that one. He's also a runner. Dean's a freak of nature. But I haven't read that book by him. Pronunciation's absolutely fine. Yes, excellent. Great. And I know you have more questions from the comments that I'll get to those as well. So yeah, just finished Chapter House and agree that multiple reads. Yeah, for sure. The one I most want to reread in the Dune series is God Emperor of Dune, because that one just philosophically just hurt my brain a little bit in a good way. It was so philosophical and such a departure from the rest of the series that's the one that kind of sticks in the brain the most that I want to reread for sure. All right, let me go back to my comments questions here. So another one is translated book, which makes me wish I could read in the original language. Crime and Punishment, for without a doubt. I've been thinking about translation a lot right now because I'm in the middle of reading Babel by R.F. Kuang. And that book has at its forefront translation, because the main character, that's what they're doing in this Tower of Babel in Oxford University, is they're translating things. And it's amazing to me how a book can make etymology and translation seem so interesting to me. So thinking about this, it made me think about like Crime and Punishment. The first time I read it, I read the very classic translation and I didn't love the book, but then I read the Pavir and Volohansky translation and it became a top 5 book of all time for me. I'll definitely reread that translation again, but I think after that, I may want to find some other translators. I know Alex and I were talking about on the Grimoire one time, and he mentioned another translator I'd never heard of that I definitely want to try. So I think for that, I would want to read Crime and Punishment from, if I were able to read Russian, that would be my choice. And I think my other choice for that, I'd like to experience Murakami in the original Japanese. I wonder what it's like for someone who's reading Murakami in Japanese, what the experience is like, as opposed to somebody reading, translated English. So another great question there. Yeah, God Emperor stays in the head for sure. Oh, you saw me on my Dune video. Yeah, my Dune video is the only video I have that surpassed 10,000 views. And that was one of the ones that early on in the channel, when I ranked the Dune videos, that really, got the channel going. So appreciate people seeing it and then sticking around, because, that was over a year ago. The Idiot. Yes, I read The Idiot. I haven't read My Name is Red, but I did read The Idiot, and I read that with my old book club, and that was a really fun discussion for that one. I like Dostoevsky. You have to be in the right mindset because he is a challenge in comparison to some of the other Russians. Like, I find Tolstoy a breezy read. Even War and Peace was kind of breezy, but Dostoevsky, you got to sit and focus a little bit more. All right, back to my questions here. Let's see. 3 authors, living or dead, that you would like to hang out with besides Stephen King. So this is one I had time to think about. So I'm going to add a layer to this question. and I'm going to say where I want to hang out with this person. So first of all, I don't know a lot about the lives of authors. That's not something I ever research or even find out about, whether they're current or, classic authors. It's not something that I really know much about, their lives. So I'm going to pick 3 current authors that I see on BookTube, that I see interviews, and I just feel like, oh, that's somebody would be interesting to talk to. So my first choice would be Joe Abercrombie. Every time I watch an interview with him, I mean, I'm just struck by his wit and his humor. And he's one that I'd just like to go to a pub and have a pint with him and just talk about books. My second choice, and maybe it's because I'm reading Babel right now, would be Rebecca Kuang. I've seen some interviews with her, and she's just very intelligent and just seems like a delightful human being. So I think I'd like to have coffee with R.F. Kuang. I think that would be fun. And then the last one is, I haven't read him yet, but I really need to, is Brian Lee Durfee. I mean, I see his channel all the time, and I think with Brian, I'd like to watch a football game together, go to a sports bar and maybe my Steelers versus his Raiders, and, talk trash and talk books and everything in between. So I think those are the 3 authors that I'd like to hang out with most. So Shirag, you haven't read the first Dune novel. It's great whenever you get to it, but it's great. War and Peace took you 6 months. Yeah. Brothers Karamazov is definitely a challenge. That one took a while for me, but I did enjoy it. I do probably need to reread that one again to get the full effect of it. Let's see. Back to my questions here. Piece of music reminds me of certain books. That doesn't really happen to me too much, unless it is a book that influenced a piece of music, like maybe a book that was turned into an opera or a musical or even a ballet or something like that. I think I keep those 2 sides of my persona in my life, separate for the most part. So let's see. On to questions here. Katie had asked what age I began reading as a hobby and how I got into reading. I've read my whole life. I was one of those kids that my mother read to me when I was young, and I just basically picked it up as a hobby. I was an only child and also a child of divorce. So I think that kids of that age get really good at finding solitary pursuits. And for me, I discovered reading early on, and I just loved it. So as long as I can remember, I've been a big reader. My biggest claim to fame in elementary school, I remember in 3rd grade, I had read every single Hardy Boys mystery. And it's just been something that's been part of me as long as I can remember. For sure. Shirag, did I read Fairy Tale? Yes, I did. And I think I was going to do a review, but I'm not super high on it. For me, it's a 3.5 to 4-star book. My thoughts on Fairy Tale, I think, are a lot of what I've seen. Everybody, it's remarkable. We were talking about this on the Grimoire on one of the channels at one point about how we're all having kind of the same experience, where we love the first 300 pages, and then the next 200 pages feels like a different book, and then we really like the ending. And it was just really disjunct. It was a missed opportunity. I felt that those 200 pages, if he could have condensed that to about 40 or 50 pages, he could have had one narrative that was compelling beginning to end. But I think my expectations were too high, to be honest, because it's my favorite author and he was going back to my favorite genre. So my expectations might have been out of place, but I did enjoy a lot of it. Really, I mean, 2/3 of the book was great. It was just that tangent in the middle that just came out of nowhere, and I felt that he started telling a different story, and just a little disappointing. So that was my experience. I've seen a lot of people talk about it and give reviews about it. So I'm not going to give a full review because, again, I don't love it, and I want to try to save my single book reviews for books that I love. So, story behind my channel name. That's a great question, Caitlin. So it goes back to my running days. I was in a race one time it was a 5K, so kind of a short race for what I would do. And I was in a pack. I was in the second pack on the road. There were 4 high school kids leading the race, and then there were 4 of us, and it was 4, older guys like myself. I was in my 30s at the time, and they were up ahead and we were behind. And in the last half of the race, I dropped the 3 guys I was with, and I caught 3 of the high school kids. I finished second in the race, and one of my friends just said, "That was some fury at the end. We need to call you the Red Fury." And it kind of stuck as a running nickname. So that was kind of my nickname in running, because I always tried to run faster at the end of the race than at the beginning. So they called me Red Fury. And when I wanted to come up with a channel name, I thought that was a little more interesting than just Josh. So that's where Red Fury Books came from. So yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, Shirag, it's interesting. Go for the fantasy. And yeah, I enjoyed the slice of life in that book a lot more than the fantasy. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Hey, Philip, thanks for stopping by. I guess we're going to get to chat with Matt very, very soon, but appreciate you stopping by here. Second King book. Yeah, don't judge it by that. He has so much in there that you can read. Have I read Dumas? Yes. I have 3 Musketeers on the shelf, on my TBR shelf, and I'll get to that soon. Maybe not this year, probably next year. But I read Count of Monte Cristo for the first time last year, and it was my book of the year. I love a good revenge tale, and this one was one of the best, and I adore that book. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading more Dumas this year, because that book really blew me away. Let's see. Yes, everyone knows what Red Fury Books means now. All right, let me go back to the questions that were in the comments section of that video. I was up to, all right, Kamikaze was here earlier. What's a book that had an unexpected and meaningful impact on my life? And I'm glad I had time to think about this. I read The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison when I was 18. And that really changed the way I thought about a lot of things in my life. I come from a small hometown, and I wouldn't say that it was a diverse community, but it was kind of half white and half black, basically. So growing up, a lot of my friends were African Americans, and, some of my best friends were, and I never really thought about it because I grew up in such an integrated community, and I never really thought about race very often. And then I read Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, and it just exposed me to racism and just some things that my friends would see that I'd never seen before. And it hit me at a good time that it became really a formative book in my life, because I really thought about these things that I'd never considered before. And it's still a book that I need to reread. I actually threw it on my TBR like a couple years ago, because I realized that I don't have my copy from high school. And I had read, what was the book? I read a book. Got to look at the bookshelf to remember. I read a similar book in that vein. Oh, Richard Wright's Native Son. I read that last year, and it really got me thinking about Invisible Man again. But really, really great book that just had a fundamental impact on my life and the way that I think about race in general. And I was really glad I read it, because it helped inform me for some things that friends at the time and friends even today have gone through that I haven't thankfully had to go through. So great book if that's something that you want to read about, for sure. Let's see, just make sure I don't miss anything. Count of Monte Cristo, favorite book ever, for sure, without a doubt. Okay, back to my comments questions. Dan had asked, suggested reading order for Ender's Game Saga for first-time reader. Well, Dan, if you can wait till December, I'm doing a video on this. When I finish my Ender's read, I have 3 to go the next 3 months, and then I'll read The Last Shadow, which is the culmination of the Shadow series. I'll give you a few recommendations. But if you absolutely have to start, we can quote Scott the Bald Booktuber when he says, publication order always. So if you can't wait till December with my advice as far as reading those series of books, those two series that are intertwined, read in publication order, and you'll be fine that way. I will mention publication order, and I do have a couple other ideas having gone through this. It's basically, it'll be an 11-month journey at that point through these books. So I'll have some different ideas for you for sure. Let's see. Salem's Lot on the radar. Absolutely. 11/22/63. If you saw my Stephen King video, you know that's my favorite work by King's. Love it, love it, love it. Wasn't around in 63. I wasn't either, so but I still loved it for sure. Visible Man, Big C, memoir by Langston Hughes. I'll have to check that out, Kurt. That if it's along the same vein, I think I want to pick that one up for sure. All right, let's see what else we have on my comments, questions. Talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'll answer it here as well. Just my opinion on adaptations or reimaginations of beloved pieces of media like Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, in the name of pleasing a modern day audience. So I would say that most of the things that not most. Listen, I have some faults with some of the modern reinterpretations, but it has to do more with storytelling than some of the other things that I see. For instance, the fact that we have a person of color playing an elf, I have no problems with that. I think that's great. I mean, can you say for sure that in the grand scheme of Lord of the Rings that every elf looks the same? They don't all have blonde hair. They're not all light complected. So seeing a person of color play an elf, great. I have no problems with that character. I don't have problems with in adaptations if they change a character's, gender, like they did one of the characters in the Dune movie. No big deal. My problem with adaptations is when they don't respect the fundamentals of the adaptation, the source material. The screenwriters in Hollywood that feel that they can come up with a better ending than Stephen King or some of these great authors. Let me give you the biggest example. I Am Legend. If any of you have seen the movie and read the book, they have nothing to do with one another. So I don't even know why that movie is called I Am Legend, except for the fact that the main character has the same name. Because those two stories are totally different, have no resemblance upon one another. So I have more problems with adaptations like that. Like Wheel of Time adaptation, there were things I liked about it a lot, and there were a lot of things I didn't like about it. When I think the showrunners or whatever, if they are respecting the source material, even if they change things to make a more compelling story when they change the medium, I think it's fine. You have to remember, people didn't like Fellowship of the Ring, Peter Jackson film, which nowadays people think are crazy, but they were up in arms. No Tom Bombadil. You're not respecting Tolkien. But I still think that's one of the greatest adaptations. So it's kind of a fine line. And I don't know if I answered the question adequately, but I think as long as the heart of the story is respected, I'm going to enjoy it, even if they change some of the details. So I don't know if I answered that or not. Let's see. All right. Alvin asked, favorite distance to race. So I raced everything from 3,000 meters to the marathon. And actually I did one ultra marathon. I did a 50-mile race, which was horrible. I'll never do that again. My favorite race distance was the 10K. Because for those of you that don't know, that's 6.2 miles. I felt that the 10K was the ultimate test of a runner. Because to be successful at a 10K, you had to be both a great endurance runner, but you also had to have some speed. Like a 5K, a high school kid with no endurance can fake it, can run a horrible 5K and run really fast because they're young and fast. A marathon, you can finish if you have the endurance. You don't need any speed really to run a marathon. But to run a 10K, you had to have the perfect combination of both. And that was my favorite race distance because you're running almost as fast as if you're running 5,000 meters, just a little bit slower, but you have to hold it for twice as long. So that was always my favorite distance. And I always loved the 10K distance because the first race I ever won was a 10K. And maybe that hooked me at that point as well. Let's see. Coming up on spooky season, recommendations where to start with the horror genre. Again, my favorites, if I'm going to recommend horror, I'm going to recommend Stephen King. So I would say Salem's Lot. If you want to go a different direction, there's a book I read a couple years ago called Hex by Thomas Auld Heuvelt, Heuvelt. It's a translation. I think he's Dutch. And it was this chilling story of this kind of lost village in New England that has a witch that just kind of shows up. You know, she'll just pop up in the middle of the street, or she'll pop up in your basement, and this village keeping this a secret from the outside world. Fascinating tale. So those would kind of be my two recommendations, one Stephen King and one non-Stephen King. Weird question. Beautiful shelves behind you in the videos. Do I own an e-reader? Yes, I do. So I think that for me, my reading is enhanced by physical books. There's just something about holding the book that I connect with it more. I realized this one year when I don't DNF very many books, usually about 2 or 3 a year, but one year I DNF'd 4 books and all of them were on my Kindle. And I wondered if there was a correlation there. So I've kind of stepped away from reading a lot of the books on the Kindle. I probably say maybe 1 out of 10 books I read on the Kindle, because I do have a queue on my library, lending list, but I don't buy that many books on the Kindle anymore. Because again, I think when I lived in apartments, even when I owned a condominium, I didn't have as much space. But now I own a home and I have room for the shelves. I pretty much gravitate towards the books. So that's kind of my answer to that one. So Bombadil was the best cut Jackson made. I liked Bombadil. I just read the verse version in the Tales of the Perilous Realm, The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. I enjoyed that as well. He's definitely an interesting character. But I really like Peter Jackson. If you watched all of the behind the scenes stuff in the movies like I did, like 20 hours worth or whatever, he said he tried to still make the story, make it think like, well, they came out of the forest. They could have met up with Tom Bombadil, just happened off screen. So I think he still had a little bit of respect for that. But that's funny. Philip, yeah, used to like half marathons. That's another great race distance. I gave you the range, but 10Ks and halves, I think, were the most satisfying distances. Marathons are tough, man. I ran 15 of them and I ran a couple fast ones, but it takes a lot out of you. You need to train and make that a singular focus of your life for months. And then for about a few weeks after a race, you're shot. You don't have any legs. You're limping, and such a tough race distance. So I definitely like those other ones. Jan, you'd watch the movie Adaptation. I don't think Red Fury books would make a great movie. Let's see. Just finished Misery. What else should you read? Yeah. Thank you, Edwin. Glad you enjoy the channel. Misery has my favorite King villain. I think Annie Wilkes is a better villain than Pennywise, and I love Pennywise. But yeah, I would say check out my top 10 Stephen King books. That video, I think I talk about all those books kind of succinctly and tell you why I love them. I think that's probably, if you're just getting into King, I would check out those. But with King, I mean, just read the synopsis, and if it sounds interesting to you, pick it up. He's pretty consistent. I mean, he does have a few books that were not that great, but he has a lot of just great books. And I think if you like the premise, you may like the book. Alvin, how to become a Steelers fan. I grew up in Ohio, but a small town in Ohio, 40 miles from Pittsburgh. So I'm a lifelong Pittsburgh sports fan. Steelers, Penguins, still love the Pirates, even though we've been irrelevant for about 30 years. But yeah, I grew up a lifelong Steelers fan. So yeah, that's that. Hey, Miggins is here. Welcome, Matt. Glad you're here. Glad you're able to stop by. If you don't know Hobbit Hole Books, I think he says embrace the chaos, but he's got a great channel there, and I watch all his videos, so you should too. Hey, Shad, you made it. Thank you for stopping in. Oh, Jonathan from Words of Time is here. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you being here. Adam just finished American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Yes, that's the only one by Gaiman I've read. So I definitely need to read more of him. He's another author I'd like to explore. Let's see. Must ever run 10K. Yeah. Jonathan, you ran a 14K race. No interest in running a marathon. Yeah, it's and actually I don't recommend the marathon to most people. It's hard. I don't know how I ran 15 of them. That might be something in my rearview mirror of my life for sure. Let's see. Essex Dogs. Yeah, I wrote that down. I saw the Brothers Gwynn talk about that one. So I definitely want to read that because I do enjoy fiction around the 100 Years' War. The Grail Quest trilogy of Bernard Cornwell set around that time, as is the Accursed Kings of Maurice Druyon. So I do love that era. And especially now I've read a bit more, I understand a little bit more of kind of what was going on, because that's not my wheelhouse as a, just a student of history. So I have enjoyed those quite a bit. Did I enjoy the It movies? Yes. The first one a lot. The second one a little bit less. I was impressed with the casting of both of them. And I liked how they, the solution of It, those of you that have read it, and the solution, the end of the story in the kid's timeline is kind of problematic. And I thought they came up with a good change there. I think that's one where they respected the source material, but said, we can't film this. And they absolutely couldn't have, but I did like those adaptations for sure. Let's see. Hope I didn't have money on the Steelers game. Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah. At the very end. Yeah. Even Al Michaels said, yeah, some people are going to be mad about that last score at the end. That ruined the line for sure. Yes, Dan Jones is on the list. Yeah, the Brothers Gwynn have become my go-to. Them and Durfee are my go-to for historical fiction recommendations. Much as, Jonathan's here now at Words in Time. He's become my sci-fi guy for sure. Just got his Planchettes nonfiction book. Yeah, I'm amazed at the nonfiction writers that can make nonfiction as riveting as fiction. Eric Larson being top of the list. I mean, I read his book Dead Wake about the Lusitania this year, and history, what's going to happen to that ship, but he made it riveting and suspenseful. I mean, I marvel at authors that can do that with a nonfiction work, make it compelling and riveting like that. Just fantastic. Reading Grail Quest in 5 days. Excellent. Oh, glad you loved Warlord. It's the best trilogy I've read. I mean, I consider Lord of the Rings a single book because Tolkien conceived it like that. But as far as best trilogy, I don't know if anything's better than Warlord Chronicles in any genre, for sure. Speaking of historical fiction, thank you for the Shogun recommendation. Yes, Adam, glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad people found that video, because like I said, for a video to hit 2,000 views for me for a single book review, that's huge. So I'm glad it was that book, because I love that book, and I'm glad people are starting to discover it. So cool. Good luck editing there, Matt. I'll talk to you soon. All right, I'm caught up there. Let me go back to my comments questions here. Dan had asked for my take on trigger warnings in adult books that are destined to adults. Are they important or detrimental to an author's, liberty to tell the emotional side of their story? I kind of see both arguments here. How you don't want to sabotage a book because there's problematic material in there, but you also, if someone is really sensitive to a certain topic, maybe letting them know ahead of time, like that this is going to be a topic, you might save them, I don't know, the grief or whatever. So I'm not sure where I stand, but I will say I DNF'd a book last year because I was reading it and I was kind of enjoying the book. And about halfway through, there was a scene that was unfolding that kind of unfolded what, for me, the story was going to be about. There was a teenage girl was about to get raped in the story. And I could tell not only that act, but what it was going to do for the rest of the book. Had I known that going in, I might have saved a few hours and not read the book. So I kind of understand why people talk about trigger warnings, but I'm not really sure where I stand there. But because yeah, it is tough if an author tackles a hard topic. And that book in particular, I had a friend that kept telling me, pick it up again, pick it up. It has a great ending, it goes well, but I didn't have the heart to pursue that topic for just when I read mostly for enjoyment. So, I mean, I kind of understand, trigger warnings for books. It is what it is, I guess. Alvin, you bought the whole Shogun series. That's fantastic. I have Taipan on the shelf in the other room. I'm not sure if I'll get to it now or end of the year. I had some viewers send me some books, which are great. So I'm trying to get those in by the end of the year if I can. And I have just, I need to finish Fits in the Fool. I'm also reading Ilium and Olympus, some other big books. So I got some chunkers ahead. So I don't know if I'll get to Taipan this year, but I'll definitely read all 6, based on what I had for Shogun. Let's see. All right. Paramita, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for the questions. I'll see you on the Grimoire, I'm sure. All right. Well, I have just one more question, which was on my community tab. This is from Danny, and it was a question about Shogun. So perfect timing for this. And he asked essentially, how well researched was it? And was Clavel sensitive and well-informed and well-researched into his approach about Japan. And the reason is Danny lives in Japan and he's lived there for, I don't know, I think 15 years or something like that. So he's very sensitive to how Japan is portrayed in, Western media. I wondered the same thing. And in fact, before I did the review, I found this book called Lessons from Shogun. I think that's what it's called. And I think it's called Lessons from Shogun, Eastern History and Western Fantasy or something like that. And basically it's a collection of essays from various scholars who are experts on Japan at the time. And the basic conclusion was, although there are fabrications, I mean, none of the characters are real. And some of the situations are certainly fictitious. As a whole, they basically said it was accurate. I saw a lot of reviews on Goodreads slamming Shogun, saying that's not what Japan's like. That's not what Japan's like, forgetting that this is Japan in the year 1600. So yeah, in the year 2022, Japan's a lot different than it was in the 1600s. There are a couple plot points that, you'll realize, yeah, that was written in the 70s. But as a whole, it is pretty well researched. And Clavel, he wrote these 6 books in this Asian saga based in various areas in Asia. And I think he generally did his homework and did a great job, because I think that you'll find in this book that a lot of the Japanese characters are more sympathetic than the Western characters, at least in Shogun. So, Danny, I'd love if you read it to talk with you about it, because someone who lives there, I'd definitely love to hear your perspectives about it, because I loved it. Again, it's still, I've read 97 or 98 books this year. It's still #1 on mine. So let's see, Shirag, you're on the 2nd book of Grail Quest. Yeah, definitely love that. And make sure you don't, all K-Hod's on that. Definitely don't miss the 4th book. The unofficial 4th book of that series is called 1356, and it's the Battle of Poitiers. And any of you that have read Bernard Cornwell, you know that he's the master of battle scenes. I mean, you just ask George R.R. Martin or John Gwynne about who's the best. They all say Bernard Cornwell's the best. And that book is about a battle scene for sure. Let's see if I missed anything else here. How long is the stream? At 7 p.m. in Germany. Oh, another international viewer. Well, I definitely have to be off kind of soon, because I'm going to be on another live stream starting in 45 minutes. Matt, who's been in the chat for a while, Matt is doing a conversation video, and it's just going to be me and Matt and AP Canavan from A Critical Dragon and Philip Chase, and we're just going to talk about books. So that starts in 45 minutes. So I have to definitely be done by then. But I am done with my questions that have been sent ahead of time. But I'm looking forward to that. So if you want to hear, some of us talk about the books we love, I know personally, having watched Philip and AP forever, watching them talk about books, I'm excited to get in on the act and join them for that. So you'll have to sleep in like 5 hours or so. Yeah, but it won't last that long. Let's see. Historical fiction gets a lot of complaints on Goodreads, social things. Yeah, I agree with that. I think historical fiction in many ways is one of the hardest genres to write in as well, because you have to be accurate. And then you're also telling your modern retelling of something that happened in the past. When I read The Killer Angels by Michael Shera earlier this year, in his foreword, he talked about the things that he was conscious about that he changed. Like, he didn't make the people, this was set in the American Civil War, he didn't make everybody talk like they talk back then. He made it more modern. So the communication and the correspondence was from a more modern lens. And things like that, authors have to make choices. And sometimes they might make a choice that other historians or either readers just don't like. So I think it's really tough. I mean, I'm not a writer, although I had a book idea at one point, and I realized if I ever tried to write it, which I won't, because I've tried to write and I'm a musician, not an author. So it's just not going to happen. But I had an idea for a book. But I told myself if I ever wrote it, I would retell it as a fantasy tale, because just the amounts of research to be able to make sure that it's factually accurate would take as much time as writing it. So I marvel at those historians that are able to tell historical fiction that's accurate. But, it's tough because you still have people that attack you and say that this isn't right or this isn't right. So kind of feel for those authors. But yeah, I definitely agree there, Caitlin. A lot of times the reviewers are maybe a little less sympathetic to what those people have to do. For sure. Oh, Chuck, you started Taipan. Definitely let me know how that goes. I know that one's set in the 1840s, so that's definitely going to be a different read. But I have heard good things about that one. Channel name for that chat is Matt on Books, Caitlin. He's right above. He's a couple comments above you there. So check out Matt's channel. He just started, and he's got some great content going already. And I'm definitely looking forward to that chat later. Let's see. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Kurt. It's that's what I love about this. That's been my single favorite thing about discovering BookTube, is just talking with people about books. I've said before, I have a lot of friends that are fellow readers in my life, and I'm very fortunate for that, I can call them, or we can text, or we can talk about books when we get together, but we don't always read the same thing. I mentioned in an early video, like, I love Robin Hobb, and nobody I know in real life has read Robin Hobb. Well, now I have one friend that's read Robin Hobb. So I have one friend in real life that we can talk about it. But I can get here and I can talk with so many of you that love Robin Hobb and love the same kind of books that I do. So that's really the reason why I kept making videos, is I just have enjoyed in the comments section talking with all of you about, the books I'm reading, and oftentimes getting insights into them that I never thought of. Like Ender's Game, I gave like a 30-minute review, and then the comment section blew up and I learned even more that I hadn't even considered. So I love that part of it. So Kurt, I love that you enjoy the interaction, because that's for me the thing that I love about, my channel and all the other channels I follow. I mean, geez, I follow like 40 or 50 booktubers and I try to watch everything that they watch. It's tough. There's only so many meals where I have my phone in front of me that I can do that. So definitely love the interaction. So don't forget to share some of my music before my next live stream. I think if I do that Pops video, I'll do that. Maybe play my trumpet a little bit there. If you're interested in this subject, research isn't as painful. That's a good point, Jennifer, in regards to the historical fiction side of things, for sure. Shirag, I feel like I've earned a degree after any video with AP in it. Oh, without a doubt. My goodness. That's what I love. I was thinking earlier, I filmed my review for Speaker of the Dead this morning. And one of the things that I enjoyed of that is I discovered the core value. I think I discovered the core trait of Ender Wiggin in that book, because I think all human beings and all great characters have something at their core that informs who they are. And I know for me, my core trait is I love to learn. So you mentioned AP. Like, that's the reasons I love his and Philip's channels so much, is I just seem to learn so much. Like, I read a book that I think I know really well, and then Philip drops a review and gives me so many things that I hadn't considered. So that's why I definitely, love channels like that, and definitely look forward to chatting with those guys in a little bit here. So, hey, Matt, I got you a sub on Caitlin's channel. Or Caitlin on Matt's channel. So, yeah, come check us out. I'm sure that'll be great. I mean, it's AP and Philip and Matt and I are just going to talk about books. So it's going to be great. Chuck wanted to write his version of Downton Abbey. Yeah, set in the future. That's an idea. I love those genre bending types of things. I'm about to read Ilium by Dan Simmons, which is the Iliad set in space. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I think that's going to be perfect book for me to read, because I do love just the inventiveness of that idea. That sounds like a good one. Watching more books about videos. The struggle is real. I tell you, I have so many videos that I don't have time to do, and I click the watch later, and then I go back to my watch later queue, and I see that, I have 50 videos in that queue now. So the good thing about a lot of booktube videos is there are certain channels that are not doing too much visually that I can often put on and listen to if I'm doing other things, which are great. But then there's the ones that they do things visually that I want to be watching as much. So it's kind of tough, but yeah, it's tough. We read as much books, watch as many videos as we read sometimes. Booktube's my go-to entertainment. Yeah, I watch more YouTube than I do, any of my streaming services for sure. Yeah, watch later. Yeah, I'm glad there is that, because especially, if I'm see a 30-minute video, like one I really want to watch later. I don't know if you follow a library ladder. That's Bridger's channel. If you don't, the most underrated booktube channel, Library Ladder. He has, if you think you like my shelves, you've seen nothing. I mean, it's called the Library Ladder because he has the best book collection in booktube, and his videos are fantastic. He shines a light on a lot of classic books that you've never heard of. And he just started his bookshelf tour, and his first part is like 30 or 40 minutes. So I had to throw it into the watch later queue, but I can't wait to watch that one because I'll be drooling at his collection. Because I have 5 shelves here and another one behind me and another one in the other room. So I have 7 shelves, and he has, I think, a whole room, if not rooms. So yeah, I definitely feel that. Feel videos while you're running. That's a good idea. Jan asked, did I order the secret projects from Brandon Sanderson? Am I excited? Yes and yes. I did order the secret projects. Sanderson's not an author that I put up there for me with Robin Hobb or Joe Abercrombie in the fantasy genre, but he's still a top 10 author for me. He writes so fast. It's remarkable. And his imagination's off the charts. So as soon as I saw that, I have the premium hardcovers coming next year. So I'm definitely looking forward to those. Yeah, Library Ladder is amazing. Yeah, incredible. I love his content for sure. And yeah, his voice is hypnotic. So, if you're sitting there, he might lull you to sleep because he's got one of those just perfect voices. Another booktuber you have to follow for sure. There's so many. And I discover so many on like channels that have other people on, like Matt's starting this on his channel, and like Steve Talks Books has a Friday conversation where I was on there last week, and there were 2 of us booktubers and 2 authors, and every week he has a different lineup, and I see somebody else and think, oh, I want to see what they're doing, or I bump into someone on a Discord. It's just it's great. It's just a great community to find all of these people where we share the same things. We just love literature, and it's something that I definitely love, but it's tough. Yeah, you're right. Bridger's voice could definitely do that. Leather jacket and cologne advertisements. He can make millions without a doubt. Any last questions? I think I want to wrap this up in about 5 minutes so that I can maybe grab a quick lunch before I have the discussion with Matt and Philip and AP over on Matt's channel, because I know that's going to go a while. And, I think I need to fuel up for that. So any last questions or things you want to know from me? This was a question and answer, ask me anything type format. And it's been a lot of fun, let me tell you. I love the interaction in the chat. I love the questions that you asked me ahead of time that I was able to think about a little bit. So if those answers a little bit more coherent, that was why. But I appreciate all of you coming by. As far as some future things you can look forward to on the channel, obviously every month I do a TBR and I do my review of all of my books that I read this month. September's looking like it's probably going to be a 10-book month by the time I get to the end. I've read 8 so far, and I think I have 2 more I'll knock out by the end of the month. And some future videos, I already mentioned the Ender's Game, that I'm going to do a video talking about all of the options for reading orders and my advice, which may include skipping 1 or 2 of the books. So that's going to happen in December. October, I have planned, I'm going to do a video ranking all of Joe Abercrombie's books. Since I have read all 13, I was going to do a tier list, but it would have been all A tier and S tier. So there's no reason to do that. So I plan on doing the my ranking of those 13 books sometimes in October for sure. Let's see. Got another question there. Shirag asked just what time of day I read typically. I always read at night. On the weekends, I'll usually read in the afternoon too, but it's usually evening. I mean, I don't have time before work. I don't have time at work. When I get home, whenever leisure time starts, after I've gotten everything ready for the next day, that's usually when I read for sure. On the weekend though, I normally in the afternoons, I'll often pick up a book for a couple hours. But I just want to thank all of you for coming by, all of you that maybe see this after the fact, for clicking on this video. I feel like I've got 1,000 subs, like I actually have a YouTube channel now. Before it just seemed like, I was just making videos and didn't have much of an audience. So I'm very grateful for all of you. As I've said before, I value the views and the subscribes and the likes, but I most value the comments. So I thank all of you that have ever commented on my video. I thank you all for all of your comments today, and I look for more in the future. I hope to see you on Matt's channel. If you check out that live stream, even if you're watching this later, you can probably check out the replay later. But I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And thank you once again for subscribing to Red Fury Books, checking out this live stream. Have a great day. Have a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.